You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile we put Ghana first. Little Tete says that the rapid rise in oil and therefore fuel cost is causing headaches. Prices are skyrocketing every day. What I am doing differently is to be still, because this too shall pass. It is difficult, yes, but we won't steal or cheat people to be rich. God will come through for us. E.L.'s Wood says, my transportation to work and back home is 12 Ghana cedis. Now I use a bicycle instead. 72 Ghana cedis bagged a week. Mr. Winnie says, I play 1:0:1 tactics to survive. Mamara 90 says, I am beginning to practice truancy. I go to work 3 out of 5 days. I can't buy fuel continuously. Who are you working for? Joe Till says, everything is affected from tax to e-levy. All we are hoping for is the next meal. And then he says to us, is the next meal. Tax salaries still get electronic charges. So yeah, cheers. I had an experience in the course of the week. I went to Cape Coast, court in Cape Coast, and on my return, I stopped to buy Fanti Kenke by the roadside. I was paying the woman. I bought, 30 cedis worth, or was it 40 cedis worth? And then I had to pay with Momo because I didn't have cash. I made a mistake and I paid 400 instead of 40 cedis. So I moved away a bit and discovered I had overpaid. So I called and asked for a refund. So I get a refund, then she tells me that she must make a deduction before she sends me the refund. And I told her, I got this deduction when I sent the money. So I then saw the situation. If you are sending the same money back and forth, it will be exhausted without you actually spending it. E-levy. Yeah. King Rash says, I remember the Greek minister in one of his comments said, there is excess food in our market. Why the abnormal increase in food prices? Why is it that some of our leaders are taking Ghanaians for granted? And finally, Shea Idrisu, says, each day you wake up in Ghana, you get demoralized to move on because things are getting worse each day. Yet people are voted for, are living luxuriously and defending the indefensible. Ghana will crash at a point, like they will say in Nigeria, Tafiakwa. God forbid. Now let's go to the matter of the Cathedral. And as you know, the Secretariat has issued a statement clarifying some matters and making it clear to us that the state is at the forefront of the Cathedral. So I want to begin the Cathedral discussions, and you know the Cathedral discussions were resurrected as a result of Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa asking that monies that have been paid have not been approved by Parliament. As we understand now, the National Cathedral, the total cost will be $350 million. That is 2.8 billion. How is it going to be funded? The Finance Minister in the 2019 budget, he said, Mr. Speaker, the state is facilitating this process by providing the land, the Secretariat, and seed money for the preparatory phase. End quote. This will not burden the ordinary taxpayer. Then he gave the big assurance. He said, Mr. Speaker, the President is determined that the building of the National Cathedral will not put undue financial burdens on the state. He has therefore proposed a partnership between the state and the Ghanaian Christian community, both at home and in the diaspora. End quote. Funds released by the Finance Ministry so far, seed money, 25 million United States dollars. That is 200 million Ghana cedis. Mr. Okudzeto Ablakwa has been asking questions. The project has stalled, contractors haven't been paid, owners of demolished properties haven't been compensated, among other issues. The compensation amounts of 6.5 million has still not been paid to one of the affected persons or entities, that is Waterstone Realty Limited. There was an entity there, Waterstone Realty. Their compensation was for 6.5 million. That has not been paid. The company has served notice on the government of Ghana since the 4th of November 2021 that it will go to court. There are other developments in that regard. Dr. Kwabena Opuni Frimpong, in 2017, he is with the process. He said, our understanding of this National Cathedral, we have had a discussion. He said they had this conversations with the Minister for Chieftaincy and Religious Affairs, Kofi Jamesi, and my understanding is that it is the churches that are going to build this National Cathedral. And that's a quotation from him. He said, trustees must come forward on the release of the 200 million by the Finance Ministry. So now we know the trustees working through the Secretariat have issued a 7-page document. I read it last night. I don't know if you have the opportunity to read all of that. Let's begin the discussion with Bright Simmons. He will spend a bit of time to make a presentation regarding his perspective on the issues. Bright, thank you very much once again for making time to join us. I know that you are constrained at this time, but you agreed to join us on this subject. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Samson, for inviting me. And with your permission, I will just go right into a presentation just because it helps me organize my thoughts on what is a fairly elaborate subject. I think this is a very intriguing subject. And while all of us will have different views because we share different faiths, we have different politics, that the truth is, from a policy point of view, we can make some very emphatic comments about this National Cathedral matter. And I mean, as far as I'm concerned, purely from a policy angle, we have to look at how has the government managed the process. That should be forefront. Even if we are supporters of the government, even if we are strong Christians and believe that the cathedral has spiritual significance that will transform our society, we still have to ask, given that the government has been very instrumental in trying to get this cathedral built, has the government done its work properly? I think we can have that kind of conversation regardless of our politics. And if we're all honest and decent people, nobody can dispute that what has happened is incredible in terms of the sheer confusion that has characterized this project. And understand that somebody from the Secretariat will be joining us to help us make sense of some of the complicated, shambolic, confusionist situations that we find ourselves in as far as the National Cathedral is concerned. I'm going to try and summarize the position of the civil society group that I represent, that part of civil society that is focused on good governance and policy, good policy management in this country. And so you have to bear with me as I kind of systematically walk you through the way our thinking has been shaped. First of all, we have to start with the value proposition. Why is Ghana building a national cathedral? And when we look at that value proposition, we have to situate it in context. And the first context is that if you wanted things that Ghana doesn't have, things that will add value to people's lives, things that will add value to the national life, to even our spiritual life, will you go for a cathedral? That's a question that we don't think the government has answered well enough. The reason being that there are a lot of cathedrals in Ghana. There are about 40 traditional cathedrals, and per last count, more than 120 cathedral scale Christian worship centers. That is churches or temples or synagogues or whatever you call them that are the scale of a cathedral. So of the things we don't have, even if you agree that the cathedral is a great thing in and of itself, you have to ask yourself whether we need one more cathedral. The second thing that is also important is when we look at our religious spectrum, and there's a part of our religious spectrum that really has strong connections with our lives as indigenous Ghanaians and as Africans. And that part of our religious lives has seen no support from the state whatsoever. Think of Konfanochi's birthplace, whether in Akugwa or if you go to Aguna, and think of the famous palm tree on which he was supposed to have climbed with sandals. Think of all the spiritual sites connected to the Koli Lagoon, the Sakumono Lagoon, and the rest. These are indigenous aspects of our belief system. And while you may be Christian, while some of the guests on this show may be Christian, there are significant numbers of Ghanaians who believe in these traditional religions. And if you are a tourist, you probably will be coming to Ghana to see the Sakumono Shrine. If it was properly designed to be tourist friendly, then you'll be coming to see another Christian cathedral, when the Catholic Church alone has 1,800 plus minor basilicas around the world. So we have to ask ourselves that question, whether indeed, from an additionality point of view, an extra cathedral is what we need. Then there is also this massive confusion about categories. They are calling it a cathedral, which is really bizarre, because a cathedral is a technical term. A cathedral is the seat of a bishop. It is only those churches that have episcopal hierarchies, the Anglicans, the Methodists, and the rest of them, they use the term cathedral with a very specific meaning, typically as the seat of a diocesan bishop, and sometimes you may have suffragan bishops in some cathedrals, but typically the bishop, whether a metropolitan bishop or the bishop of some high rank, will be in the cathedral. Is the suggestion that we're going to have a national bishop? Because that's a very important point if we're going to try and convince people that this is a cathedral. So first of all, it is not a cathedral. It's not a cathedral because we don't accept, given the context, that any of the churches that are episcopal in this country have custodianship over the cathedral, or the proposed cathedral, inverted commas. It's not the Catholics, it's not the Anglicans, it's not the Methodists. It's supposed to be some kind of ecumenical interdenominational center. But interdenominational centers worldwide are never called cathedrals. Nobody will be able to point to me a single ecumenical or interdenominational worship center called a cathedral anywhere in the world. In fact, one of the closest things we have in Africa to what we are trying to do is what the Nigerians did some time ago. And that is extraordinarily interesting and prescriptive and, shall I say, it's exhortative for us. We can learn a lot from what happened in Nigeria in the way that they went about building what people call the National Church. But it's actually, the real name of it is the National Christian Center. So this ecumenical center, which was an attempt by multiple Christian sects to have a common location, like the way we have with chaplaincies in the military and things like that, it started in 1989. And the Christian dominations were responsible for funding it, which a lot of people don't know. So if you go to Nigeria and see the so-called National Church, it was not built by the state or funded by the state. In fact, from 1989 to 2004, it languished because they could not find the money. And then the government decided that it will put some, not resources, it will put some impetus behind it by the president of the country becoming the national treasurer as a means of mobilization. And then the Christian denominations mobilized resources to the tune of 3 billion naira, which today will be less than $30 million, to build that beautiful edifice you see in Abuja by 2005. The government did not put a single cent in it, but it's also not a cathedral because it's an ecumenical center or interdenominational center. So this is a very important lesson. One of the challenges we have with the way government sometimes runs Ghana, and we've had it with successive government, but I think with this government it's becoming quite problematic. There is almost no effort in advance of building these policies, to engage widely with a view of making the policy better. We're not saying that engage civil society, engage research institutions, engage think tanks because they are smarter than the people that you have in government. We are saying that because people you have in government have similar interests, and sometimes the nature of politics is such that people have to show loyalty. They are not always able to tell you things as they are. So what happens is that we don't do enough research, we don't have any real policy documents. When issues arise, we get confused. People are running helter-skelter because where is the policy document backing the cathedral? With whom have they shared it with? Who are the people that are not already convinced by it, who have been engaged so that they can share ideas about how they could have done this better? So in simple terms, the Nigerian National Church, whose real and appropriate name is the National Christian Center, was not funded by the state. And this is a pattern that you see all over the world. So I've heard people say, oh, we have national cathedrals around the world and the rest of it. Two major points. A national cathedral is not the same as a kind of interdenominational or ecumenical center. A national cathedral would typically be run by an episcopal church, like the Anglicans, like the Catholics, like the Methodists, churches that have episcopal hierarchies, where there are bishops and there are suffragan bishops, diocesan bishops, etc. That's an important point. The second point is that it's almost never built by the government. And I'll walk you through a number of the popular ones that have come up in the debate. So you take the US Washington National Cathedral. What most people don't know is that this is an Anglican church. In the US, it's called an Episcopal church because the Anglican church in the US, that's how it's called. And this church, or this cathedral, is actually an Anglican cathedral. Its real name is the Cathedral of St. Paul and St. Peter. So the fact that it's often called, branded the National Cathedral, doesn't mean that the government of the United States went to find money and pumped it into it. The Christian community and ordinary people in the United States who love it for its history contribute. And it cost them about $65 million in today's money to build that with no government money whatsoever. Notre Dame has also often been mentioned as the National Cathedral of France. It's a Catholic cathedral. The Catholics ran it. They have custodianship. If you go to Jerusalem, you go to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, you find out that the Greek Orthodox have custodianship in different places, or some of the different nativity sites. You have the Russian Orthodox, etc. So typically you have these custodianship, and then they are responsible for finding the money to put into it. The Israeli government doesn't fund the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. It's not that, that's not how it works. In fact, Notre Dame was recently burnt down, and resources had to be found to restore it. If you've noticed, all the $790 million have come from corporate and private donations. Not a single penny, cent, dollar of government of France money has gone into Notre Dame because it's a Catholic cathedral. It may be the National Cathedral of France, the most impressive mother church of France, but that doesn't mean that you have to put government money in it necessarily. In Paul Cathedral in Britain, cost about $230 million. Interesting funding model. Special tariff on coal brought into the port of London is how they funded the cathedral. You will say, well, that is almost quasi-government. Well, the truth is that at that time, Anglicanism was the established church of England. What that means is that they had a national religion. And the head of state was also the governor of the church. And therefore, in that regard, if the City of London, with the approval of Parliament, decide to place a special tariff on coal imports into London to pay for it, it's understandable. But even so, it was not ordinary people's taxes in the consolidated funds or the treasury, as they call it in Britain, that went into paying for St. Paul. You can think of Denmark, which is another religion, where the national religion is the Lutheran religion. And this is a Protestant country. And there also, you have very important churches like the Church of Our Lady, which is often considered the mother church in Copenhagen and the national church. And it is not funded by the public. It is funded by the church. In fact, so much so that even though it's also a listed tourist site, and a lot of people visit Our Lady, the Church of Our Lady, when they have damages, sometimes due to the pressure brought on it by tourists, the government insists that payment is done by the church, because it's church property. So we have to be very clear in terms of the way we understand these concepts of national cathedral. First of all, if you have a national cathedral, properly speaking, then either you have an established church in the country, so there's an established religion, as in the case of the United Kingdom, where Anglicanism is the established religion and the head of state is the supreme governor of the church, or in some instances, you have the cathedral of an existing Christian denomination, like the Catholics or the Anglicans, and then it gets co-opted by Brandon to be the national cathedral. It is similar in the case that we have in Russia, where you have an established religion, the Russian Orthodox Church, and St. Basil Cathedral was therefore built for that purpose by Ivan the Terrible. In that regard, you have no problems. Where you have an ecumenical church or an ecumenical worship center, that cannot really be a cathedral, that cannot really be funded by the public, but it's purported to be a national cathedral, in complete conflation of the terminology. But on top of that also, in complete contrast with how it is usually done all over the world, there's a challenge. The second big problem that we have from a policy management point of view is the way that we've gone about the procurement process. And I think Honorable Okudzeto has said a lot about this already, so I'll just highlight on the keynotes. First of all, typically, you have a very strict scheduling of the way that the fees are paid at different stages. And for some, apart from the schematic designs, which you know will often start with, most of the other elements will continue for many months, and in some cases for many years. Like some of the construction documents that you generate, you don't generate them at once, because as you develop lighting, as you develop plumbing, a whole bunch of developments emerge and you produce construction documents and the rest of it. We are quite surprised to learn that huge amounts of money is being given to Sir David Adjaye upfront. On top of that, the amount of money that he's charged from the documents that we have now, about $22 million, which was nearly 10% of project cost, is monstrous. Look at the median survey data. Remember that this is the data you are looking on the screen now is survey data. What that means is that the Royal Institute for Architecture in the United Kingdom, RIBA, goes around and asks architects and collects data on what fees they are charging. Sir David Adjaye's studio is primarily UK based. So I'm using RIBA data. That is the regulatory authority there. That is the professional association there. And they go around and find out what architects typically charge. What you realize is that as the scale of the project increases, the percentage reduces, because it's natural. If I'm going to do a $10 billion project, I don't have to pay $1 billion to an architect. Okay. That makes no sense. So that scaling dynamic means, therefore, that the average percentage for project costs that you typically find in the United Kingdom is about 3.5%. We have a situation where we're paying, and that's for design and build. We are paying not just design, to be very clear. We are paying almost 10% to Sir David Adjaye for this exercise that he's undertaken on behalf of the country. And nobody doubts his competence, nobody doubts his talent, but this is inflationary pricing, which we must talk about. If we were to bring it down to Ghana, we say, okay, well, he's based in the UK, but now he has a studio in Accra, he has a studio in London. What is the UK, the Ghanaian guidance when it comes to architectural fees? And here also, I find it shocking that we will be breaching the Ghana Institute of Architects fee structure, which is around 4%. So we're going to about 10%. What is it about, say, the Adjaye that means that we must pay so much when the project scale is such that typically we need to be compliant with guidance? Because it's a big project, so it's making a lot of money. So that's a challenge. Architectural design fees should be about 1%. We've paid $6 million, like as much as more than 6% of the project cost, and that is like 5 times or more what the guidance will suggest for just the schematic diagrams and the early concepts, and that is problematic. The other thing we have a challenge with is this new pattern whereby the government is consistently single sourcing large projects to a single architect. It's unusual. We've not had it in this country. We've not seen that. What has all of a sudden changed? We appreciate the fact that Sir David Adjaye is a global architect of international renown, but he's been practicing for years. Since 2000, he's been famous around the world. Why is it that all of a sudden in 2020 or 2018, 2019 onwards, we are seeing massive projects being awarded to him without design competition? Whereas where he operates, where he traditionally operates, look at the number of projects that he's done in Africa, maybe less than 5% of his entire portfolio. So he operates primarily internationally. And in those places, it's almost always the case that there's a design competition. How can we award the Ghana Trade Fair Center a $1.something billion project, suggesting that if you're going to keep paying him at the rate we are paying him, it's about $100 million project? We decided to do the Ghana Freedom Pavilion in the Biennale in Venice for the first time in 2019, and we went for him. And we're going to pay a huge amount of money. We're going to spend more than $1 billion on Agenda 111. If we use the same scaling fee scales that we've noted that he's been applying, we're going to pay him about $100 million. By the time we are through, we would have paid a single architect more than $300 million as a country. Somebody has to ask some questions. And if we argue that, well, he's a renowned architect and therefore we like his work, why doesn't he compete then? Because then it will be evident that on top of the fact that he's a globally renowned architect, his links to Ghana, his ties to Ghana will also play to his advantage compared to other international architects. But the benefit is that it will bring down the pricing because these are inflated prices. And we are paying huge amount of money to the gentleman. As I've said, we have immense regard for his talent. We have immense regard for his competence. But the way in which the country's money is being funneled, to his studio raises eyebrows. And I think the J himself would not begrudge us the feelings that we are having that something off is happening. People have also raised concerns about seeming connections to the first family. Of course, some of these matters are difficult to pin down, but we realize that in the Biennale installation, for instance, that he made for Ghana, first time Ghana spent millions of dollars in the Biennale, by the way. We've been going to the Biennale for years. Typically, it's very modest. Artists go themselves. El Anachu and all of our artists have been going for years without any fanfare. This time, we decided to build a massive installation, and we have Nana Oforiatta Ayim and Sir David J paid to set up this pavilion. Now, these are both artists of global renown and of international caliber. I don't dispute that. And it's perhaps entirely coincidental that two of our most distinguished artists will collaborate. The challenge is that Nana Oforiatta Ayim is the cousin to the president. The fact of the matter is that in a very short period of time since the coming into office of this president, hundreds of millions of dollars of projects have been awarded to a single architect, even if everything was above board. And we have suggested that the way in which the procurement was done through single sourcing, without tendering, without design competitions, without any effort to be transparent, those are problematic. But even if we assume them away, we wish them away, even if we wish them away and say, look, all of this is above board, it still raises too many eyebrows, too many coincidences colliding with each other that gives us cause for concern. Then we go into the issue around the return on investment. We've been challenged to accept and to embrace this because one of the things that will happen is tourists will come to Ghana. In fact, I was stunned reading the report, the press release by the Cathedral Secretariat, suggesting that there are 600 million Christians in Africa and they expect 10% of them to come to Ghana. That is 60 million tourists. No country in the world gets 60 million tourists on religious grounds alone. In fact, some of the best countries in the world for tourism get 60 million tourists in total, like France. So to expect that you have 60 million Christians from Africa come to look at the cathedral is problematic. But why are we not so hopeful that we will attract the millions of tourists who will pay entry fees to cover the cost? First of all, people go into cathedrals primarily for two reasons. One is the history and art. So if you go to the Duomo in Florence, that is one of the, when we had the Grand Dukes of Tuscany, that was the national church in that part of Italy, in that region of Italy, in Tuscany. And you will find that it has a precious museum with incredibly valuable artifacts dating back hundreds and hundreds of years, some of them into Roman times. There's history that will take you months to consume. People go to the Duomo for that reason. People go to Notre Dame for that reason, the history, the art. The second is the religious. So there are two main reasons you may want to go to a cathedral for religious purposes: relics or reliquaries. Typically, some of the faithful believe that either the body parts or clothing that a saint or a very holy person wore has spiritual or miraculous powers. And most of the cathedrals in the world store them. So you will go to a place like the Duomo and they will tell you that they have
We have a little challenge with Bright Simmons' presentation. He was just concluding, and we'll get him back and patiently allow him to conclude in just a couple of minutes. So you've just been listening to Bright Simmons, Honorary Vice President, Imani Africa, provoking you in a very special way, I think, because I feel provoked by some of the statements that he makes. We are joined by Dr. Paul Opoku-Mensah, Executive Director of the National Cathedral Secretariat. Thank you very much for making the time to join us, sir.
Thank you.
Right.
Good to be here.
This show, as always, is brought to you by the candid sponsorship of Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner, MTN everywhere you go, Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa, Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 31 years. Waylead Properties, Home is Where One Starts, and Farnet, Ghana. Think wood, think Farnet. Also, if you're looking for the best furniture and designs, Farnet Ghana is where to get that. Okay, so whilst we wait to correct Bright's situation and get back, I'd like us to hear Samuel Okudzeto, particularly on the back of the statement that the Secretariat has issued. Has he come to a point of amending some of his positions, or nothing has changed? Yes.
Well, thank you, Samson. I'm sorry to disappoint you that nothing has changed, really. More questions have even arisen after reading the 7-page statement from the National Cathedral Secretariat. And let me say good morning to Dr. Poku Mensah, who has joined us. I must make a preliminary observation that I honestly do not take it kindly the way you situate your statement when you conclude by saying that this historic and game-changing project, the National Cathedral of Ghana, deserves a more elevated national conversation on its nature, funding, and relevance than has been the case so far. Honestly, that is a diplomatic way of saying that so far this conversation has not really focused on the germane issues, or are not elevated, to use your own words. I totally disagree. And you see, we need to get one thing clear. We are using public funds. We are saying that belatedly, though, this is a national project. A national project will require a collective buy-in, that we all come on board. So our mindset, our posture, our orientation will have to be different. Please don't create the impression that you do not welcome accountability and that you do not want transparency to be the hallmark of this project. Because so far, these qualities have been in great deficit. Accountability, transparency, being forthright with the Ghanaian people. So please, I do not think that the Christian Council, which is asking you to come clean, CSOs, you've seen Odadia Bryce Simmons's, brilliant exposition, journalists, anti-corruption crusaders, all of us who are asking relevant questions. It is an elevated discussion. We are focused on what matters. It is our taxes, and it is important that the National Cathedral Secretariat does not, as it were, assume a posture that
do you take into account the premise for making that conclusion that this historic and game-changing project, the National Cathedral of Ghana, deserves a more elevated national conversation on its nature, funding, and relevance than has been the case so far? The premise is that throughout the 65 years of our nationhood, a number of long-term infrastructural projects have been discussed without the dispassionate analysis of cost and long-term value. So why are we attacking the National Cathedral in the manner we are doing when, in 65 years, long-term infrastructural projects in this country have not been discussed in that manner? That's the premise, or you don't get that? You don't buy that?
I do not buy it. And you see, as Christians, let's be minded, Colossians 4:6. Our responses at all times must be full of grace, well seasoned with salt. We should know how to approach everybody who has perspectives on issues. That's what the Bible teaches us. So I just thought that
I'm coming.
I begin with that point. But I'll need some time to go into the issues because you have provided a detailed response. Point 1, private project or public project. After so many years, we are hearing for the first time, and I've been in Parliament throughout this project. I'm in my 3rd term now. This is the first time we are hearing that this is a national project. You have incorporated it under the Companies Act on July 18, 2019. This is fresh information. Information that all of us have not known. And you admit in your own statement, page 2, paragraph 2, that of the 3 reasons, and the 3 reasons you gave is that gesture of thanksgiving, number 2, symbol of Christian presence and contributions to the nation, number 3, a personal pledge to God. Then you say that of these 3 reasons, the personal pledge came to be associated with the cathedral as private project that needed to be developed without state support. That association came from you. I have here statements from members of your board of trustees.
Okay. So I'll do this. Sorry for that interruption. Bright has just a few minutes to finish up his presentation. We have rectified his situation.
That's fine.
So Bright, thank you very much for rejoining us. Can we get the conclusion? Hello, Bright. Please unmute your mic.
Samson, you are muted, so I have not heard anything that is going on in the studio.
We can hear you. We can hear you now. We can hear you now. Please proceed and make the conclusion.
Okay, I'm not sure where I understand you had some technical difficulty, and so some part of my talk was unheard. So I don't know where I got disengaged. I understand it was where I was talking about pilgrims.
Exactly. Exactly.
Sorry, can you please repeat that?
Exactly, that's where you were, about the fact that we cannot be expecting the 60 million of tourists.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I'll proceed to share my screen then. Apologies for this.
Yeah, I think it's not from your end.
Yes. I think it's loading up now. Are you able to see?
And Bright is going to continue and finish up on the presentation because we didn't want to leave that conclusion hanging so that we can return to the studio, have Okujeto Ablakwa do his, and then thankfully, we have the Executive Director of the National Cathedral of Ghana, Dr. Paul Opoku-Mensah, here in the studio to assist us so that we have the full picture. If there are questions to be directed at him, this time we have the opportunity to ask him directly the questions that we may have bothering our minds about this. This program is brought to you by the candid sponsorship of Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and close as a partner. MTN everywhere you go. Ashasi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 31 years. Waylead Properties, home is where one starts. And Fanat, that's Fanat Ghana. Think wood, think Fanat. Yes, so Bright, let's hear you.
Okay, sorry. What I was trying to explain was that people will typically visit cathedrals for 2 main reasons. One, historical and artistic, and the other, spiritual.
Right.
So in respect of historical and artistic, you can think of a famous museum like the Duomo in Florence, that in those days when it was ruled by the Grand Dukes of Tuscany, that was what you might consider the equivalent of a national cathedral. And if you go into the Duomo today, there's a whole museum that will show you antiquities dating to Roman times, to Greek times. to show you the evolution of Christianity in Florence, all the way back to medieval and early Christian times. People will go because those things are precious. You can't find them anywhere else. The other reason it might be because there are instances where miracles have been associated with religious sites, particularly Christians' religious sites. And in those instances where Mary has appeared,
I guess I'm done with
revelations and things like that, people will go there because they believe that those places are holy places.
I can't ask you, I'll talk again.
Sometimes you will find instances where there will be relics, parts of the body or parts of the clothing of a holy person or a saint in the cathedral. And those reasons, though, if you go to a place like the Duomo in Florence that I mentioned earlier, they believe that the finger of John the Baptist is kept in a reliquary, and people that want healing and things like that will go there for that purpose. So if we're thinking about a national museum, a national cathedral in Ghana, which has none of these virtues, because it's starting up in 2022, it has no comparison whatsoever to say the Action Chapel, that is run by Archbishop Duncan Williams as the founding site of charismaticism in Ghana, or Our Lady of Sorrows in Navrongo, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Why there would somebody go to a cathedral built in 2022? There has to be a reason. And some of the reasons they've been mentioned doesn't really add up, like there's a restaurant there and things like that. There are restaurants everywhere in Ghana. So the only thing that we've heard, which is interesting because it does suggest that there is a plan to attract tourists of a high quality and high caliber to pay for it as well, is the museum idea. But then the thing with the museum is that you need to have a collection. You have to buy antiquities to put in the museum for people to come. And the cost of these antiquities are massive. And Renaissance painting alone can cost you $100 and something million, right? So let's say we're even buying, cheaper items, but still of some historical value. We can easily spend $250 million just on the collection for the museum. We've not even budgeted for that. We've budgeted for the construction of the cathedral and its interior furnishings. And when you look at the project plan that has currently been circulated, it's quite clear that we will need money for the museum itself. Now, we were looking into this and we said, okay, maybe they have a plan for it because it's very essential. And we realized that one of the people very connected intimately to this museum and who is not a subject, whose involvement is not a subject of request for information filings in Ghana, is a certain charismatic who has strong relationships with the Museum of the Bible, owned by a certain entrepreneur called Steve Green. And we know that the Museum of the National Cathedral Secretariat has been having conversations with this Museum of the Bible in the United States in terms of collaboration around the Bible Museum. The challenge that we've noted is that this is also a museum that has been flagged for some really frightening problems. In one instance, they had to come out and acknowledge that they have been displaying fake Dead Sea Scrolls for quite a while. And at one point, they had to admit that they had found a way to smuggle out really precious cuneiform from Iraq, for the Epic of Gilgamesh, for instance. So these are problematic issues which require investigation. Now, my point is that if all of these matters were, in the public, transparent, there was a plan, there was, documents that have been written and shared, this is what we intend to do, we want to partner with the Bible and the rest, people like us who have an interest will have shared with the public and, of course, with the government and the National Cathedral Secretariat and the rest of it, our concerns. Some of those will have been dealt with and will have had a much more robust strategy. But if you go and do these things on the quiet, it's not clear how exactly you intend to raise money to build a collection for the museum, where the money's come from and things like that. You gain a reputation for shadiness, especially when you are dealing with organizations that themselves are the subject of lawsuits and criminal inquiries about their conduct and things like that. The last point, which I think is fundamental to the challenges we are having with the cathedral, is the role of the trustees. The trustees, as we now understand, have also been constituted into the board of directors of the National Cathedral Project, which is incorporated as an entity limited by guarantee. So, standard corporate governance 101, there's a body corporate. Now, a body corporate of this nature must take its own decisions. The board of directors cannot be overridden merely because shareholders wishes something to happen. It will have to happen through the process of the board of directors, either because the representatives of the shareholders vote for it or something like that. So when we have the president of the country, the presidency, the office of the president, being responsible for procurement for an entity that is incorporated in its own stead, and that has its own corporate personality, its own legal personality, it gets very worrying. What are their graces, the archbishops on that board of trustees, saying about this wanton disregard for corporate governance rules in terms of how this will happen? The documents sent to the Public Procurement Authority should have been under the hand and the seal of the board of trustees or their executive management. Under no circumstance should the president be the one handling procurement for a cathedral, a project that has been constituted as its own entity, so money can go into it and accounting can be done at the level of that entity. We find these problems really, really frightening. We think that the shambolic nature in which this whole affair has been handled does not give credit to the government's policy management machinery. And it's time for their graces, the archbishops, who are on the board of trustees and also at the board of directors, to put their feet down, take control of the affairs, or resign if they feel that these matters are happening on their blind side. It should not be the case that though they have fiduciary responsibility, they have the duty of care, duty of loyalty, duty of obedience, etc., they are still not completely in charge. These are matters that we feel in civil society are extremely problematic, and we wish that better answers be provided than what has currently been put in the public domain by the Secretariat, purporting to answer questions. But as you will yourself acknowledge, Samson, none of the questions that we've raised today are answered by that document that you read last night.
Interesting. Thank you very much, Bryce Simmons. So, Sam, you are proceeding on a certain tangent, and I'll allow you time to do so. But could you start? Yes, Bright, thank you. Could you start
Samson,
yes.
Is it possible to ask Bright just one question?
Is that Stephen Amwa?
Yes.
Sticker, hold on for me. So, tell me, can you start from where he ended? Says none of the questions asked so far have been answered by the 7-page press statement.
Yes.
Is that truth for you?
Absolutely.
Which are these questions that have not been answered?
Question 1, Article 178 of the Constitution, which is so fundamental. Parliamentary approval was not sought before releases were made to this project. And we have put out 3 documents so far, amounting to about 200 million Ghana cedis. We have put out the first 25 million Ghana cedis, dated 31st of March 2022, signed by the Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta, Minister for Finance, which is a warrant to the Controller and Accountant General to release that sum of money. You won't find it in the 2022 budget. We have also released documents from 2021, 32 million Ghana cedis paid to Sir David Ajay. You won't find that in the 2021 budget. We have again released a warrant for 142.7 million Ghana cedis. That is $25 million.
Right.
That was to the Secretariat. So the 25 million Ghana cedis was to Ribade Construction Company Limited. The 32 million Ghana cedis was to Sir David Ajay. The 142.7 million Ghana cedis was to your Secretariat, released on the 29th of October, 2020. Again, you don't find that anywhere in the 2020 budget. I have here all the budgets of President Akufo-Addo from 2017 to 2022. You do not find that. We have also been raising procurement questions. The role of Sir David Ajay. Bryce Simmons has talked about what is wrong with the office of the president usurping the role of the board of trustees and purporting to be carrying out procurement. If you read the letter that we put out, the letter sent to the letter from the Public Procurement Authority, signed by ABAJ, the Chief Executive, on 17 December 2018. I read from the second paragraph. at the Board Technical Committee meeting number 20-020-2018 held on Thursday, 13 December 2018, the board granted approval to Office of the President in accordance with Section 72(5)(b) of Act 663 as amended to engage Messrs. David Ajayi and Associates as lead consultant construction and supervision for the construction of the National Christian Cathedral at a total cost of $23.75 million. Now, when you pay regard to Section 72(5)(b) of the Procurement Law, Act 663, a copy of which I have here, 72(5)(3) provides, the procurement entity may select consultants by inviting proposals from a single consultant where there is, you make reference to B, an emergency as specified in Section 41(b) and C. When you go to Section 41(b), this cannot apply. Section 41(b) says that a procurement entity may engage a single source procurement under Section 41 with the approval of the board. B says, where there is an urgent need for the goods, works, or services and engaging in tender proceedings or any other method of procurement is impractical due to unforeseeable circumstances, giving rise to the urgency, which is not the result of dilatory conduct on the part of the procurement entity. How does this apply? It cannot apply. That is why we have been raising issues about the procurement breaches, all the legal infractions associated to this. And this is the lost project, as we have been told. So you expect that there will be utmost fidelity to the law, to the Constitution. That is not being observed. Who defines what is urgent? You say it doesn't qualify because it cannot be said to be urgent. Yes. Who must define? There's no urgency, there's no emergency. The law defines them. It defines those circumstances. This is a personal pledge the president made to God. He had time. He's won his elections. He's constituted the board in 2017. There is so much time. From 2017, he cut the sword. He even announced, when you read the finance minister's speech to Parliament, they put out their timetable. From paragraph 157, Mr. Speaker, the President is determined that the building of the National Cathedral would not put undue financial burdens on the state. He has therefore proposed a partnership between the state and the Ghanaian Christian community, both at home and in the diaspora. The formal launch of this national fundraising campaign is slated for December 28, 2018 in Ghana and February 2019 in the United States. What's the emergency about this? What is the urgency? Has there been any national catastrophe associated to this project? None whatsoever. So these provisions of the procurement law being relied upon is just, I mean, with all due respect, I mean, unacceptable. Let me just use those words. Then let's come to the partnership components. Again, we are not seeing candor. We are not seeing sincerity. You say at page 2 of your release that within the partnership, the role of the state has been specified as follows. Appointment of the architect and design team. 2, the land and its preparation. 3, setting up and equipping the Secretariat. And 4, seed money. A major plank that has been omitted is the compensation. Many properties have been demolished. And so far, the cost, we have been putting together the cost of this compensation. This week, we put out documents from Waterstone Realty Limited. We owe them about $6.5 million. I have here the letter the Honorable John Peter Mewu wrote to them May 30th, 2018. Chief Executive Officer, Waterstone Realty Ghana Limited. Dear sir, proposed site for the National Cathedral project. The President of the Republic of Ghana, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, in conjunction with the leaders of the Christian community, has initiated a process with plans for advance to construct a National Cathedral for the state of Ghana. The proposed site for the National Cathedral is a 6.323 hectares. Being an occupant of a portion of the said land, which will be affected by the construction, the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources wishes to engage you towards a smooth relocation of your outfit. You move in, you demolish this property, the people ask for more time. They had bought this land for $2.5 million. They've employed over 100 people, and these are upmarket luxury apartments. They were making profits of about 2 million Ghana cedis a month. You demolish all of that. This is their letter, 4th June 2018, asking for more time. You said no, you don't have more time. They have to move out. You went ahead, demolished. It took you 2 good years to identify some property that you said they could go and occupy. The Lands Commission on the 12th of August 2020 allocated land.
In this case, when
company.
you say it took you, I think you should be speaking to the government.
Yes,
not the Secretariat.
yes, to the government. It took the government 2 years to offer them a 1.26 acres, which was even less than what you demolished. You demolished 1.6 acres, property on 1.6 acres of land. Will you believe something? That since 12 August 2020, they can't have access, they can't take possession. There are people in there who say that they work for national security. The Lands Commission can't tell them what to do. They are not moving out. Now they have served notice. They are going to court. And they are going to compound the 4-year losses. You are not talking about that. Something, let me reveal for the first time, and I know this will interest you. You know the Judicial Training Institute was demolished.
Of course.
Do you know how much it's going to cost Ghana to replace that? Let me reveal for the first time, $50 million. That's what the Judicial Service has put together. Their plan.
Is it just the institute or the buildings for the Court of Appeal judges that were also taking about 12 or so of them?
No, this is just the institute. We've talked about the bungalows. That's a separate matter. Because remember that when the bungalows were demolished,
there was renting for them.
There was renting for them, $5,000 a month, and then we are now constructing for them. They've even lost land because of that, because they had to negotiate with a private developer to take half of their land, and so you develop the other portion, and then the private developer takes over that portion of the land. So that's a separate matter. The Judicial Training Institute is going to cost us $50 million. The Chief Justice has been negotiating with the ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development. Those negotiations have broken down. The ECOWAS Bank has walked away. They are not really interested. They have now opened talks with the World Bank. $50 million. At today's exchange, that is in excess of 370 million Ghana cedis. So when you tell us that the role of the state is just appointment of the architect and design team, which by the way is fresh information, it was not contained in any of the budget documents, land and lease preparation, setting up and equipping the Secretariat and seed money, you are not being particularly candid. The government continues with this opacity and the lack of full disclosure that has attended upon this project. And then you see, in your statement, I think that you are taking up some responsibilities. There was
this IT company. I don't know if it's the same as the realty.
No, that's
company.
That's another one.
This IT company that we understood, was within the property, and it was hosting sensitive and expensive IT infrastructure for many state entities, including the Bank of Ghana, SEPS, SNET, CSD, the GSE, and GRA. And we understood, were also demanding in the millions of dollars for their relocation. So if they are also different.
Yes, no, that's different. You're right. And I know them. What government has done so far is just to get them a place to relocate, but they are waiting for financial compensation. So you need to add all of that. So by the time we compute, so this company, which is Comsys, I hope they don't mind I reveal their identity. Then you have Waterstone Realty. Then you have Judicial Service now looking for a $50 million loan that will be a burden on the Ghanaian taxpayer. We haven't talked about the Malian government relocation, because the Malian ambassador's residence was in that enclave. We signed an agreement with them. Please bear with us. We have to demolish. We would relocate you to Airport Residential. The cost of the land at Airport Residential, which government has just bought for them, but they are waiting for the construction of the ambassador's residence. You need to add that as well. The relocation of the judges, the cost of the construction of a permanent bungalow, then passport office. It costs us 10 million Ghana cedis to relocate the passport office. So why is government not coming clean? That is why I agree with the Special Counsel.
You said you have been doing something. What rough figure do you have? How much will it cost the state to relocate all of these entities?
This relocations is in the region of $100 million so far. So far.
Okay.
And it may even,
but you cannot be putting that on the Secretariat, because as far as they are concerned, they were simply waiting to receive land. Once they are giving the land, then they will be giving the seed money for the preparatory state phase of the project. So
no, but
we cannot be asking them questions about that, right?
No, Samson. No, I disagree. They are telling us in this statement the role of the state. So do full disclosure. Come clean. Why are you leaving out the demolition compensation of those demolished properties?
Yes, please. You speak.
It has to be stated. That's the full role. And you see, they've been going on about this lack of disclosure for too long. Something, do you know, when you read the Supreme Court judgment, which they make reference to, the 23rd January 2019 case in the James Kwabena Bonfe matter, I have a copy here. You even misled the eminent judges. The judges said here at page 19, we take note that the government has maintained a consistent theme about the unifying effects of the National Cathedral on Ghanaian Christians. So far, its contribution is to provide land for the cathedral and the actual construction to be sponsored and financed by the churches. Even the judges were misled. So everybody is being misled in this matter, and it has to stop. Now, something. I must come to.
No, I want us to hear him on the issues you have raised.
No, this point is important.
Raise that one. Add it.
The Mensa Otabil issue.
Yeah.
I am disappointed at the lack of candor, my brother. Look,
he excused himself at the point of registration. That's all they are saying. He didn't resign, and that he has been available, giving valuable advice.
You're going to compel me to see. You see, you know that we know too much about this project.
You can say anything. I went to Mutual.
But you know that.
Right.
You know that. You didn't give your board of trustees appointment letters. You know that.
Continue, I'm listening.
You didn't give them appointment letters. You called them by phone from the office of the president to be part of this. So you don't expect Dr. Mensa Otabil to resign in writing. There was no appointment letter.
No, what are you saying? But I'm trying to understand what you're saying.
What I'm saying is clear. So he doesn't need to give you any resignation letter when you didn't give him an appointment letter. That point must be emphasized. Now, in your own statement, you said, so Dr. Mensa Otabil did not resign from the board as being alleged, but excused himself at the point of registration of the directors in July 2019. For the avoidance of all doubt, Dr. Otabil has not been a member of the board of trustees since July 2019.
Right.
You are simply confirming what I put out last week on the probe. This is a confirmation. I don't see really why.
But I think there's an aspect of that has to be said, that Dr. Otabil was brought in to give an impression that because of the difficulties that the project encountered, he did not want to be associated with it. So if we get to know that since 2019, he had excused himself, then it tells a bit of a different story.
You are talking about,
right?
No, but we made a point, and if you go back, you can go back to the tape. I said that he's not been a member for more than 2 years. I said that. That's what I put.
Okay, thank you. Now, Sammy, if you can hold on there for us.
And when we raised it, you see, we were talking about that. You see, the lack of sincerity, the lack of transparency. You had him here. I have a printout from the website. You had him there all this while for more than 2 years.
Yeah.
And you yourself say, you know, that you selected these people not by institutional representation, but people with influence and visibility.
His picture, his name has been taken down from their website. So I think that's also a problem.
I thought that Dr. Procurement would have just admitted, to just say that, oh, you know, the continual use of his name and pictures on their website and publication was an administrative lapse by the Secretariat.
Explain it. Okay. It was.
Yeah, but...
All right, thank you. Thank you. So, Doc, yes, like I said, thankfully you are here.
Okay, thank you.
Before, you have been compelled to issue a 7-page statement.
Right.
First of all, do you think sincerely that you ought to have waited until that? Because people have just been asking questions, including, do you know how much the state is contributing?
I think, first I'm happy to be here. I mean, I think you've been able to make a Newsfile one of the very good ones you have to listen, partly by your intellect and the sheer force of your personality. So, also, let me begin with the posture, the issue of the posture in the 7-page. Actually, I wanted to release this almost to dampen what I felt was quite a rising temperature. So the posture I really took, and really that's what you kind of brought out in the conclusion, was that as a country, we've gone through these periods where critical national infrastructure come up. And the same issues, we almost sometimes bastardize this thing. And some of the issues that are being addressed are critical, I mean, really procedural issues. We don't want to trivialize them. But at the same time, I think part of my concern was that most of these discussions do not also bring into consideration the impact, the long-term impact of the project. So it really becomes almost a whole national conversation on procedures. It is legitimate, they are legal. I'm not trivializing, that is his role as a parliamentarian. And I think one of the things we've been able to do as a country, there are very few countries in Africa that has been able to do that. We've created this substantive uncertainty that democratic theorists will tell you is critical for political accountability. That any day we have elections, we can replace a government. And we've really been able to have this vibrant opposition that keeps the government on its toes. I think we are one of the few countries who don't even celebrate it enough. and kind of in a major part thanks to people like Honorable Ablakwa, I mean, who really keeps this accountability at the heart of our democracy. So first, congratulations for the consistency. And we don't quarrel with you on really trying to live up to your parliamentary obligations. But should I have waited for this? I mean, when is the right time to issue? I felt this was the right time, partly because, the National Cathedral was almost kind of brought into the public domain. Quite a lot of noise about it, excitement. And so even the space, to say, look, who actually should be doing the talking was almost a space you had to compete for. So I think the timing was right, I think, to really begin almost rationalizing the conversations. I mean, the National Cathedral brings quite a lot of emotions for different reasons. For those who think in a secular state, the state should have nothing at all to do with religion. For those who think that, look, no matter what, there are almost some sacred spaces that one should, buildings and others that one shouldn't touch. So it's really raised quite a lot. And sometimes you almost have to let the conversation go on to a stage where now you can come in and start this process of almost rationalizing. I think
how does the Secretariat feel when the finance minister or the government is being asked that you didn't come to Parliament to ask for approval specific for this amount you're spending?
Right.
And you hear the government hedging, or anytime they give a response, it is to say, look, get off our backs. What is it? We decide to spend, we are spending money from the presidency's budget. So what are you talking about? How do you feel I
think we'll get there. I mean, I think the finance minister talking point last week indicated that, look, If there are issues of procedural issues that have been breached, they'll resolve them. I mean, I think the key issue for us is really that this idea that somehow there's this grand agenda to deceive the nation. I mean, I think that's really, and it's been part of our history, and it's nothing to do with, I mean, NDC.
Is that not a self-inflicted situation?
Yes.
So that, for example, I'm holding these publications.
Right.
In 2018, August.
Right.
We have immediate past General Secretary of the Christian Council, Reverend Dr. Kwabena Opuni Frimpong, saying government not using taxpayers' money to build National Cathedral.
Right.
Emphatic. Then in 2019, October, you have Archbishop Duncan Williams saying, I don't see why people should fight National Cathedral project when it is not funded by taxpayers.
Exactly.
And now taxpayers' money, as much as 200 million Ghana cedis, beyond what Okudzeto expects, will be in excess of $100 million for relocation and all of those things comes in. Don't you think it's self-inflicted?
It is. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, it's right from the beginning. I mean, and I thought, look, the president was very categorical. I mean, actually, that was his first independence speech. We've used the Independence Days. I mean, so there's absolutely no way this could be a private project. Unfortunately, I mean, I think it's just once again, I think, look, people, all of this was new. So there was a certain level at which there was quite some excitement and different. I mean, part of the reason why the Secretariat kept quiet and some of these things is that if we had come out, we'd be contradicting certain figures. So it was almost, you know, sometimes you almost have to retreat. I mean, just for the right moment and now to begin to clarify. Because there was kind of expectation, different people understood it differently. And I thought this, I mean, this idea that this...
Or the Bible's admonishment that you are quick to listen or hear, but slow to speak.
And we've done that. I mean, I've been very frustrated because there were, sometimes I needed to, look, to calm public. But at the same time, if you did, you're almost going to contradict and kind of, and it's part of our politics, and it's whatever politics you're doing, that there's sometimes you just simply says, look, this is a war, okay?
So again, how do you feel as a secretariat or the trustees and directors that Ghanaians, and this is public funds, they have no idea how much of their money will go into it from the government. Personally, I sit here and I keep asking that question. So what is it? Is it that we are planning as we go on? We are not sure, but I should know ahead of time.
Yeah, ideally, yes. I think, look, for me, when this project was given, it was okay. And I saw Bright talking about what cathedrals are used for. These are historic. So every project has to be situated in its context. So the first question I asked, look, what should be the role of a national cathedral in a secular democracy whose majority citizens are religious? You have to. So it was really, the project was first and foremost almost an intellectual project. That, okay, so the president wants a national cathedral for the country. We operate a secular constitution. So how do you then make that national cathedral relevant in both legally and others, but in a country also whose citizens, both historically, aspirationally, are almost acutely religious? So then you begin to say, look, part of doing that...
And to be blunt, you want to say 70% Christian.
And yes, and the Supreme Court says between Christians and Muslims, almost 90%. I mean, from the Abrahamic faiths. So then the issue really then becomes, how do you ensure that this national cathedral really becomes relevant? It's contextualized. Okay, at a point in time, it was just a religious thing. In our case, and so that's how we began to add all these other things. To say that, look, to really get the state involved in a secular democracy, in a religious project like this, we almost have to reconceptualize it and put it almost in the ordinary language of nation building. And to do that, you needed to add all these things we've added. Bible Museum, biblical gardens. So one, it begins to then address the relevance for this 90% Christians, but also to say, look, how can we then use this infrastructure as a means to transform our society?
You meant to say 70% Christians rather than 90% Christians?
No, I didn't say 90%, but I said of the Abrahamic faiths.
Okay,
because
Abrahamic faith.
The Bible, actually, I mean, if you go to the Bible Museum, just last week there was an interesting lecture at the Museum of the Bible on the Bible and the Quran. See, because there's so much affinity that if you come to the museum, I mean, if you take the Quran, 70%, about 60, I think they say, is almost derived from the Bible, because they are all from Abraham. And so as part of what will be in the museum, actually it will be relevant almost all Ghanaians.
So my question was, how does it feel for you and all your leaders
yes, I was coming to
that you don't know the state's commitment in exact amounts?
I think it will come out. I mean, because it's an ongoing process. I mean, so for instance, Honorable Ablako says we are not clean with the state's commitment. We said the land and its preparation. You see, when we say the land, it's a category. So that category also means if any building was broken, there has to be compensation. So that's why we didn't say just the land. The land and its preparation is a category, an all-encompassing category that includes that.
But preparing land. That's not. That's
but you can't
different
prepare.
from compensation.
But you see, when someone says, "I'll give you land," and prepare it for construction, you take it for granted that all those elements are included. I mean, really. I mean, and I'm not. I don't want to trivialize what you're doing.
I know you may have a difficulty.
Of those discussions.
You have a difficulty, but I cannot tell how exactly you respond. But I have to ask it. You were with the finance minister on the GTV program.
Exactly.
When he was asked the question about lack of parliamentary approval,
right.
His response is what you said a while ago about we will be told in due course, sort of.
Right.
Are you happy about that?
See, I think what he wanted to establish, that there's really not been an agenda to say we want to disrespect Parliament. I mean, I really think that is very critical, Samson. I mean, really, that there's not been a grand agenda.
But he's breaching the Constitution. You don't spend before you go and ask permission.
That's what he was saying. He was saying, that's what I'm saying, look, this has to be resolved between them. He was saying that, look, I mentioned seed money to Parliament. I mean, so this idea that I spent without indicating that the government will spend on the cathedral is not true. I did tell Parliament, are there procedures that lead to disbursement? Okay, that's a different set of issues.
No, but Parliament doesn't approve seed money in the vacuum.
No.
It has to be specific.
I understand that. But what I'm saying is that the idea that somehow the government is giving money to the cathedral without Parliament even knowing that the government had planned to give money. I mean, there's a conceptual issue here. And he says, look, we came to Parliament to say that, look, this will be the role of the state in the National Cathedral project. And I remember when they were preparing the minister for chieftaincy, that I normally give them, everybody has to give their briefing.
When you were vetting him.
Yes, normally they ask you, look, set briefings to him. And one of the things I did was how much the state had given to the Cathedral project. And it was actually asked in Parliament. And he says, look, the state had given $25 million. So I think it's for us, the Secretariat, it's really this issue that somehow there's a grand agenda to deceive the nation.
But elsewhere, this conduct, we are told, can collapse an entire government.
You see,
not just the minister being sacked.
You see, those are the things that I think, look, this will be resolved between Parliament and the Executive. I think the finance minister was very humble. It says, look.
The questions that Bryce Simmons raised, what do you say? He says, the architectural design work.
Right.
If this man was coming from England or from the UK, he will be entitled to something not more than 3% of the cost. In Ghana, the professional fees are set out by the profession would have been not more than 4%. of the cost.
Right.
But here he is earning 10% of the cost. How does it feel for you?
I think, look, these are issues that were discussed. I mean, the Attorney General was involved, PPA, other questions of percentages, they can be addressed. But I think in all the discussions, so once again, procedural issues, percentages and everything, absolutely, they are subjects for discussion. They can be discussed. But I think for me, what is lost in this is really this idea of then, you see, using that as the building block to then almost trivialize the role of this architect. I mean, I remember some of the discussions I've had on the National Cathedral project, like this museum. I mean, this is the leading museum. I remember when I went there. I mean, it's almost like, who is this guy? I mean, these are, I mean, billion-dollar projects, really. When I went there, when I mentioned the name of the architect, I mean, immediately they said, look, okay, Ghana is a serious country. I mean, because the same architect had built the National Museum of African American, he had designed it. The contractors who built that museum are the same contractors who built the Museum of the Bible. So I remember the first time I went, the senior vice president of the construction company, Clark's, Brian Frank, was there. I mean, when they just, so sometimes I do understand, I mean, in a country where we have so much, that when you hear some of these figures, but what normally, and I'm not, David can defend himself, the government can defend the contract for him, but there's something that gets lost, that sometimes you attract some of these names. I mean, when David came here alone, I mean, look at the number of people who've come, including Dave Chappelle. I mean, says, look, I want him to build a house for me in Ghana. Look, even the house you build for him, even cover the cost of his design. But he attracts, there are people like him who almost help to, and sorry for my use of the word again, elevate whole industries because of their presence. David is one of those. And as a country,
I'll be sincere with you that I'll be sincere with you that as listening to you, I can tell the feedback I'm getting from our viewers and listeners that there are things that you should be taking seriously. You don't seem to want to give them serious attention, but you are looking at the religious moral questions rather than the questions of accountability and transparency,
so what I'm saying
which are very serious.
They're very serious. That's why I started by saying we should not trivialize those. You see, but those are not issues we can resolve on Newsfile. There are institutions that are responsible for that. I really think, so what should a program like Newsfile do? The issues of accountability are so critical. I mean, to the whole transformation of our country, the survival of our democracy. But those issues are not resolved on Newsfile. There are institutions that are there. So that's why the finance minister was saying that, look, Parliament will call them to answer. I mean, and I think we really, because if we don't do that, what we do is that you end up almost incensing the nation. I mean, tensions are really, and I think for me, the key issue is that we should be careful not to fall under a certain threshold.
When you hear government spokespersons, including the national chairman of the NPP, say that Okafor Didi, and you hear a member of the trustees say that, well, David built a house for God when there was difficulty. How does that, make you feel? I don't know, but I feel really terrible about that.
I think there's political communication. I think I mean, that's why I'm saying that, look, I was hoping with this 7-page that will begin to rationalize the conversations. And so when I talk about elevation, I'm not saying that, because I think that some of them, in the midst of when you feel like you are being attacked, the normal reaction, the default reaction is kind of you defend. But I think we've come to a stage where we can begin the process of rationalizing the discussions. And that begins by saying that, look, what Honorable Ablakwa and others are raising are critical issues. I mean, and I want to state it here, the accountability issues are so critical.
Okay.
We are not.
So are you setting?
All I'm saying.
Are you setting at the point of your statement when you talk about the partnership with the church in Ghana and in the diaspora?
Right.
Are you setting of the state's involvement? When does it terminate?
You see, it's a national. You see, that's what I wanted to start with. The National Cathedral is a national monument. It's a state monument. In fact, and I think that's part of. I was saying that I think one of the things the president did, and he's not gotten credit for, is to say that look, for a national monument, I really want us to build it in partnership with those who might have, disproportionate use of this monument. So actually, it is a state monument. And he's saying, look, the church has always been an active participant in our transformation and development. Will the churches who will almost make more use of this help in developing this? So it's not the other way around.
So the government actors, including the president, are miscommunicating to us. They should be telling the citizens that you are funding this project. It is not land and preparatory state.
It's not seed money.
You see, the president says, I'm proposing a partnership for this. This is a national project. But I want to do this in partnership. And so we had to sit back and say, look, to really bring clarity to the partnership, you have to define the roles of the two partners. And for me, and so that operationalization was my role. It says, look, how do we make sure that we clearly define the state's role in this? In the partnership to build it. Yeah. So then it becomes, look, first is the architect who had already been appointed. And that, for me, I know that it's part of we run a Republican democracy. Some of you know that. And that means practically that every 4 years, in our case, we almost give our power to dream to one person. I mean, that's all really the whole notion of a Republican democracy.
It is not an unchecked power.
Exactly.
That's why Parliament is there, and that's the concern of many.
But what I'm saying is
that when the minister says land preparatory phase, seed money for preparatory state, and the citizens cannot know ahead of time, and you in charge of this and behind this you put your everything into it, you can't even tell where that terminates.
No, we can't. I mean, what I'm saying is that, look, even for the Bible Museum, May 4th, just this May 4th, where we met a technical team that's when they actually finished all the concepts. So now if you say, look, this is coming here, you know exactly what is coming there. And so then now you know all the costs. So people think we are literally hiding from, it's been an ongoing process, because we have since looked, how do we ensure that a project of this nature, and I'll be coming back to Bright's questions about whether we can attract the kind of tourists we think we can attract. When you're doing it, you want to make sure that, look, we've included all the elements that we believe would allow us to attract the kind of traffic needed here. And so it's taking quite some time to arrive at those. So it's only, I'll say, May 4th, we had our last meeting, that, and then they will give us their cost. Then you have the full cost. And I think the conversation then should be, for instance, what should be the state's role when it says seed money? What is the total cost, and what should be the state's contribution to that total cost?
Okay. I'm being told to take a break here, but before I do that, can we have an idea the contribution of the church so far, because it's a partnership you're working with?
We in my
statement.
Yeah, we said that there will be a press conference on June 27th, where everything. But every month, by the way, every month we send the contributions to the church leaders, all the church leaders, every month, that look, this is how much is coming from the churches. And so we want this to be a more comprehensive submission on June 25th, so that the trustees themselves will present it to the nation.
Okay, I'll take a quick break here and return. This is Newsfile, it's your most authoritative news analysis platform. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile, it's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. My guest that I've been interacting with so far on the Cathedral, Dr. Paul Opoku-Mensah, Executive Director, National Cathedral Secretariat. You are now within the presidency.
Yeah, the Secretariat is within the presidency.
Okay.
To stress the national character of the project.
Right. What I mean is that you are within the presidency as a presidential staffer, so to speak.
Yes.
Okay, so
yes.
So also Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa, MP North Tongue and ranking member, Foreign Affairs Committee of Parliament. You heard Bright Simmons earlier. We have very limited time, unfortunately. Let me go to Professor Bokwing. Professor Bokwing, what would you have to say, having listened to Dr. Paul Opoku-Mensah and the rest of our guests on this National Cathedral matters?
Yes, thank you very much, Samson. And I think it's unfortunate what we are hearing and developments after this whole National Cathedral. And I think government is to be blamed in terms of aid conduct, which is almost bringing into discussion again whether it was necessary at all to even start this. Because then it tells you that we have not made progress, okay? Because we are still spending a lot of time talking about whether it was necessary and all of this. And it's the things that we had gotten over that we felt that we needed to move on as a country. And we are at this point again simply because of government's own posture, management of information, and the whole procurement, they've turned the whole thing into a procurement economy, centralized, with a certain motive that is very difficult to associate with as an independent, as an objective person, as an ordinary Ghanaian. And I think that is not good. So if you look at this whole thing, you see that the management and the lack of disclosure and look, there were a lot of things that I had stated I was going to share this morning. But then when I read a statement from the Secretariat, it moderated me a bit. And the question was, why that delay and all of that? Okay, so there are other things that perhaps on whether God will live there or will even look in that direction or will be happy or so. I haven't received any text from God or WhatsApp from God to make any pronouncement on that and all of that. But I believe that's something that could have united us as a country. Okay, just because of the conduct and operationalization that tends to lean credence to a certain widespread perception about this whole government, tends to create needless confusion and all of that. And so if you are doing something like this in such a polarized environment, you are looking at the management, the posture, and the direction that builds ownership and consensus going forward. I think that should be the drive. And so far, the way government has approached this whole thing from the procurement perspective, from the management of the Secretariat, the trustees and all of that, really tends to contradict whether this whole thing is to place the churches at the center of it, or really is that, okay, let's use the churches as the fronting of it, but this is really our real intention. And I think all of these things, I don't know, I think that it's hurting. I have a soft side, I must admit, towards the National Cathedral, and I will not hide that. Okay, but the way government is going about it and all of that really is hurting me to some extent. Okay. Because I believe that what is the role of the churches so far? We need that clarification from the one as to where we are now. Because I believe that the churches, if they saw the need that this would unite us and all of that, are capable of funding this.
Unfortunate that we have run out of time on this. Yes, Mr. Blakwa, if you can do a minute, we have just run out of time. Yes,
very quickly. I would have thought that the statement will have provided a breakdown. The 200 million Ghana cedis, what has it been used for so far? Especially as you admit, you confirm what we put out, that the work on the project has stalled. And I have here a copy of the letter that Ribade sent out to its staff, terminating the agreement with them, over 200 workers, saying that for lack of payment from the National Cathedral Secretariat, So where has the money gone to? It's not gone into the compensation of the victims of demolition.
We do a very comprehensive.
And so we'll need that breakdown.
I think we
then
do.
design.
He says
design.
they will do that. You do that on the 4th.
Yeah, but even the breakdown.
And then design. I see some inconsistency and contradiction. In one breath, you say the office of the president has paid for all design, paragraph 9. Then when you come to paragraph 11, you say that the $25 million you received, portion of it was used for design of the integration of a Bible museum.
That's a different thing.
So how much are we spending on design alone? That would even go beyond 10%. And you see, for projects of this caliber, we don't spend so much on just design. Then duration. Why are you rushing to complete this by 2024 when you know that all over the world, Washington National Cathedral built in 82 years, Cologne Cathedral 74 years, Notre Dame Cathedral 26 years.
And you must emphasize, you hear even government people say Washington National Cathedral, they say it is for the state.
No, it's not for the state.
No. I think that's the things I wanted to.
The Milan Cathedral, 579 years. Look, so these are iconic projects that you take time.
I'm sorry, but we have run out of time. We have run out of time.
Other priority issues.
Thank you, Sammy. What would you say finally in 30 seconds?
30 seconds.
Yes.
I mean, I think this, once again, like I started my letter with, that really this represents a unique moment for this country. Can we rationalize the discussion like Professor Bokpin says? This is a project that can unite this country. I mean, we live in a very, very, very polarized political environment, a denominationalized church landscape. Let's begin to use this National Cathedral as the moment to almost elevate our national conversations and really begin to look at what this represents for us. The Secretariat is beginning to organize a series of consultations on this issue because that's what we realize, that look, there's a whole misconception that is out there about the National Cathedral and whether it's the state that owns. It's contextual. In no way the state that owns the
Which you agree is self-inflicted because you originated it. Yeah.
I mean, in no way it is the state that owns the cathedral. In France and Co. at the time, it was a state church. I mean, so there's a whole thing. What do you do in hours where you don't have one dominant church? These are fascinating things that I think all of us can.
Somebody got really angry, sent a message, says, if Kenufureta is saying it will fetch us money, he should let Databank find money and build it because they will make money.
I mean, those are the things I'm saying that let's elevate the discussions. Look, what we have done, really, just last week, I was in Israel to look at the artifacts. He was talking about artifacts. Bright was talking about artifacts. Yeah. National cathedrals, really, they are really based on the reputations, on the architect and the internal everything, and programming. And that's
thank you very much. It does look like we need a whole program dedicated to give a lot more light on these matters. Dr. Paul Opoku-Mensah is Executive Director, National Cathedral Secretariat. Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa is MP Norton and Ranking Member, Foreign Affairs Committee of Parliament. Godfred Bokpin is Professor of Finance and Economics, University of Ghana. Bright Simmons, Honorary Vice President of Imani Africa. Stephen Amwa joined us in the first segment, who is Dr. Stephen Amwa, MP in Shaiso and Member Finance Committee of Parliament. I'm Samson Lardi Anyenini, and my outfit, as always, is by Habil's Couture. You can call them 0200 84 1988. Have a good afternoon.